All right. We're all in our places with bright, shiny faces. Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to our October meeting of the Task Force for Achieving Academic Equity and Excellence for Black Boys. You're reminded to please mute your mics unless you are speaking so that we have minimal feedback. We have been busy. Our work started at 9 o'clock. We welcome our public who is now able to view us and able to view our special guest speaker as well. As a protocol for our website, and I'm sorry, for our virtual meetings, first of all, we ask that you all turn on your video so we can see you. And also keep in mind that if you have a message, that our chat box is visible to our public, just keeping that in mind. We are graced today with the presence of a gentleman that I have long admired, Dr. Juwanza Kunjufu. Just giving you some background, and this is mainly for the public who may not have his bio as the rest of our task force does. Dr. Kunjufu was educated at Morgan State. Okay, I know we have some Morgan State in the house. Don't we have some Morgan State? All right, okay, we got some Morgan State alumni in the house. Illinois State and Union Graduate School. He's been a guest speaker at most universities around the U.S. He's also authored 40 books. So I've got some more. I think I have about a third of them, Dr. Kunjufu, so I'll have to start finding out what I don't have yet. His work has been featured in Ebony and Essence magazines, and he's been a guest on BET, MSNBC, and also on Oprah. And his work is used in online courses nationwide. Dr. Kunjufu says that his greatest accomplishment is that he is a husband, father, and grandfather. He's also a vegetarian. All right. I aspire to be that, Dr. Kunjufu, one day. And an avid tennis player. And he's not missed a day's work in 42 years. Truly admirable, Dr. Kunjufu. So he asked that you hold your questions until the end. And I know that you do have questions, task force members, because we have read his book in advance. Please indicate in the chat if you wish to ask Dr. Kunjufu a question at the end of his presentation. All you have to do is just put question, and then I will call on you so you can ask your question to Dr. Kunjufu. I won't be able to see you because Dr. Kunjufu is going to be showing some slides. And once he shares his screen, we won't be able to see each other unless you scroll over to another screen. And I'm sure you know how that works. All right, without further ado, Dr. Kunjufu, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Greene. And good morning, everyone. I'm very disappointed that I can't touch you because I've been doing this since 1974 and I've always been a hands-on person. I want to be there. I want to feel you. I want to touch you. It's part of my learning style, part of my pedagogy. And so this sharing, virtual sharing, I'm getting adjusted to it, but I can't wait to be able to be in Maryland and in your particular city to work with you directly. I'm going to go to my screen now. My late mentor was Dr. Barbara Sizemore. And when I started my career in 1974, she gave me this theoretical paradigm that I'm still using 46 years later. What exactly is the problem? What caused it? What are the solutions? And last but not least, implementation. Now, I love Dr. Greene dearly, and I thought she was my friend, but I'm having to condense a 3-day workshop into 45 minutes plus a Q&A. So I've been praying about this with regards to how do you do this in 45 minutes. So I'm going to emphasize more of the solutions than the problems and causes. But I can't wait to be physically in your state so I can get my 3 days back and work with your staff in more detail. As it relates to the problems, if you can just look at this particular screen, these are just some of the problems that Black and Hispanic males are experiencing. If we had more time, I would look at them and speak about each one of them. But at this point, I just want you to look at the screen and think about some of the problems that you see and what comes to your mind and what do you think causes it and what are the solutions to these problems. I'm sure this is the driving force for the Maryland Task Force with regards to some of these problems. Later on, we'll look at this first one. Only 12% of 8th grade African American males are proficient in reading. In the richest country in the world, this is a disgrace. Illiteracy is the precursor for incarceration. If we teach Black boys how to read, we have a 90% chance of keeping them out of prison. Most of you have my bestseller, Countering the Conspiracy to Destroy Black Boys. When I wrote this book, we were primarily looking at 3 grades, kindergarten, 4th grade, and 9th grade. This is a homework assignment. How can you explain a Black boy scoring at the 98th percentile on the Maryland state exam in reading, and this same boy 5 years later dropping to the 35th percentile, from 92 to 24, from 63 to 4? Give me 5 reasons to explain the 4th grade syndrome. And I never imagined that governors were going to pimp my research like this and use 4th grade reading scores as a precursor for prison growth and prison expansion. That was not the objective. The objective was to create a 4th grade intervention team to stop this tremendous decline. Is your school in gender compliance? What percent of your students are African American male? Let's say, for example, that we're in Baltimore and 90% of the students, let's say, are African American, so 45% would be African American male. So we're looking for that same percent for special ed, for retention, for remedial reading, for suspension, for the dropout rate, for male teachers, for gifted and talented, and AP. So another homework assignment, what percent of your students are African American male? Percentage the same for special ed, retention, remedial reading and math, suspension, the dropout rate, male teachers, gifted and talented, and AP. I think you know the answers are we are not in compliance. Now, my mentor, Dr. Sizemore, told me, never give a group your solutions until you ascertain from the group what they felt caused the problem. For example, when I work with school districts nationwide, they bring me in because their white and Asian students are scoring approximately at the 75 percentile. And their African American and Latino students are scoring around the 35 percentile. So my question to them before I give my solutions, what do they feel was the major reason for the racial academic achievement gap? And the majority of staff members, not in Maryland, but in Pennsylvania, in New York, in Massachusetts, and other parts of the country, they give the column to my left. It's race, it's the income of the parents, the number of parents, the educational background of the parent, parental involvement, and funding. Now notice these causes, they have no control over. They can't change the race, the income, the number of parents, the educational background, their involvement, or state or national funding. And that's very convenient for people who want to blame external factors. Now, because we have a very distinguished group of panelists here, I'm sure you believe that the causes are more to the right. School culture, principal quality, teacher expectation, classroom management, pedagogy, curriculum, time on task, values, special education, suspension, tracking, summer, test usage, gender differences, bonding, and teacher demographics. And I regret that I'm rushing through this because each of these gaps or causes is an hour presentation in and of itself, but I'm rushing to get to the solutions. I mentioned earlier there are 3 critical grades: kindergarten, 4th grade, and 9th grade. If you want to see God at his best, look at our boys in kindergarten. This problem is not genetic. Our boys are at their best in kindergarten. They sit in the front of the class, they're eager, they're curious, they're on task, they love learning. If you want to see Satan at his best, look at our boys in 9th grade. Black boys in Maryland are not dropping out in the 11th or 12th grade, they're dropping out in 9th grade. And I believe the grade in the middle is the most important, and that's 4th grade. We could spend a whole day on kindergarten, 4th grade, and 9th grade. The second one, schools without Black males. There are buildings where I go into, and there's not one Black male in the building. And if a Black male is in the building, I'm going to wager he's a custodian first, a security guard second, a PE teacher third, an administrator fourth, a high school teacher fifth, junior high sixth, and you can count in Maryland the number of primary grade teachers that are African American male. Is the future of Black male students in the hands of white female teachers? I used to spend, before the pandemic, almost 3 days a week, primarily working with white female teachers. Since 1954, Brown versus Topeka, there's been a 66% decline in African American teachers. Now, these are just some of the issues that are affecting African American males, and we'll go through them very fast. The male ego, wish I could stay there longer. Class clown, showdown, the dozens, code switching, relational learner, or oral learner, tactile learner, kinesthetic learner, schools and classroom masculinity and decor, loss of childhood innocence, school esteem versus self-esteem, being smart is attributed with being white and feminine, cool pose, energy level, aggressive or assertive, impact of hip hop culture, homework and classroom participation, organization and timing, and Detroit Red. Can I have a female beside Dr. Simpson and Dr. Greene? Can you tell me who was Detroit Red?
Malcolm X.
Malcolm X. I could have a whole workshop on the development between Malcolm Little, a brilliant 8th grade honor roll student who was destroyed by an 8th grade teacher, Mr. Swasti, whose words converted a Malcolm Little, an honor roll student, to Detroit Red. It was in prison where he was finally taught Afrocentricity. Let me park there a moment. The rumor is you have to go to jail to learn your history and your culture. My latest book is titled COVID 1619. If you think that COVID-19 is deadly, COVID 1619 is worse. It's longer, more systemic, and you're going to need more than a mask to prevent being affected by COVID 1619. So from Malcolm Little to Detroit Red, in prison he was converted to Malcolm X, and on his own he became El Haj Malik El Shabazz. Again, we could have a whole workshop just on the development of Malcolm Little. Obsession with respect, playing the race card, mother's overprotection. I would love to work with some of your parents who have sons, because if you've heard any of my workshops, I talk frequently about some mothers raise their daughters and love their sons. For homework, what are the classroom implications of educating a mama's boy? And then the last issue here is fatherlessness. Rumor has it in 1920, 90% of Black youth had their fathers in the home. In 1960, 80% of Black youth had their fathers in the home. Now, the media tells us in 2020, only 28% of Black youth have their fathers actively involved in their children's lives. Is that true? Another homework assignment. Since you didn't give me 3 days, Dr. Greene, I'm giving lots of homework. For homework, is it really 61%? Is it 28%? What percent of Black youth have their fathers actively involved in their children's lives? We'll skip over Tessa, teacher expectations, student achievement. I'm an advocate that expectations make the difference. That is not the race of the teacher. It's not the gender of the teacher. It's their expectations, their time on task, and the ability to bond with their students. And I like that because I don't see anywhere on the horizon anytime soon that we're going to increase the 2% of African American male teachers, nor decrease the 83% white female teachers. And I'm doing everything I possibly can to empower white female teachers to make a difference. And one of those elements is increasing their expectations. Now, here we're looking at gender differences. And again, this is a day's workshop. Boys and girls are different. And many teachers in college were never given a workshop on male learning styles. If you know that boys have a shorter attention span, what should you do differently with your lesson plan? If you know that boys have a higher energy level, what should you allow more of in the classroom? If we know that girls mature faster than boys, there's almost a 3-year difference, K-12. And my wife says we never catch up, but definitely not K-12. What are the classroom implications for a slower maturation rate? Should we expect boys to learn how to read at the same time as we expect girls to read? Boys are less developed in terms of fine motor skills, less hearing ability, more aggressive, not as neat, less cooperative, influenced more by their peer group, less developed in verbal skills, less developed in timing and organizing tasks. Again, I regret this is a day's workshop in and of itself with regards to gender differences. We're going to skip over this slide on reading. Again, another day's workshop on the most important subject, the precursor for incarceration. And later on, I'm going to look at best books for boys. because we have a collection of books that inspires boys to love to read. What I respect most about my parents, besides introducing me to God, they gave me a love for reading, but they allowed me to read what I wanted to read, not read what they wanted me to read. Again, we could have a day's workshop on special education. What year was Brown versus Topeka? Did we have special education that year? Is special education the new form of tracking? Is it the new form of segregation? Why is it that boys, not just black boys, there's a 2-to-1 ratio of white boys to white girls in special education? Have we designed a female classroom for large numbers of male students? Again, I regret we could have a whole day's workshop just on special education. The same applies to this screen on suspension. And later on, we're going to look at some of these solutions, especially the Dr. King and Malcolm X classroom. Again, we're not going to spend time on this slide, dropout prevention, but I do want to emphasize it's coming up in a few moments, the 9th grade academy. I mentioned earlier that black boys are not dropping out in 11th or 12th grade. They're dropping out in 9th grade, and one major reason for that is social promotion. They were promoted out of elementary school. They're in high school. They're 16 years of age with a 4th grade reading and math school. Do you know how embarrassing that is? All right, so without any further ado, now I will begin the workshop. It's 7:22 my time, so I guess we have about 23 minutes before we go to the Q&A. I believe the principal is the instructional leader, and we have a full day's workshop just on principal development. There are 2 types of principals, as you know, Dr. Greene. We have the CEO that loves their office, and they spend the bulk of their time in their office pushing papers. But in high achieving schools, the principal is the instructional leader. And during the school day, they're walking the corridors, they're visiting classrooms, and they're monitoring teachers. Again, I'm rushing this. Let me move on to, in a high achieving school, another solution, a no excuse culture. They don't blame parental background, parental education, the number of parents. In high achieving schools, the teacher's lounge is an empowering place for teachers. In low achieving schools, the most negative room in the school is the teacher's lounge. In high achieving schools, they have a mission statement. And the mission statement we're promoting nationwide is this one. If the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. If the student has not learned, then the teacher has not taught. Until teachers buy into this mission statement, take ownership of the outcome of their students, we will continue to have this problem. The next solution is mandatory in-service training. Nothing hurts me more than to fly from Arizona to Maryland and the ineffective principal, the CEO of the building, has made the staff meeting voluntary. If the meeting is voluntary, I'm primarily speaking to the best staff members in the school. In order for us to change the culture of the school, the meeting needs to be mandatory. We also are recommending restorative justice. And if I had time, I would elaborate on these initials: unity, criticism, unity. We have found that the peer group, the children respect justice coming more from their peer group than they do from teachers. And we have found the peer group is harder on themselves than we are. At another time, we'll come back and look at it in more detail. Kozbach, I understand you had my friend Dr. Ron Walker and his staff with you recently. He gave an excellent presentation. Let's give it up. Let's give kudos to Kozba. My next solution is looping. Until we have more master teachers, I'm recommending that we loop with a master teacher. We have found research, Dr. Greene, 2 consecutive years of an ineffective teacher could destroy a child for life. But the reverse of that, 2 consecutive years of a master teacher could produce a scholar. The next solution, serial teaching. Rather than the same teacher in looping, a serial teaching concept is where it's the same type of teacher, where we go from a 3rd grade master teacher, Mrs. Jones, to a 4th grade master teacher, Mr. Peterson. Same type of teacher, just a different teacher, same concept. The next solution is teacher collaboration. We have found research in Los Angeles, Sparks Middle School, they were in the lowest percentile before they introduced teacher collaboration. They introduced collaboration and went from 9% to 92% on test scores. Now the students are still Black, they're still poor, the daddy's still missing in action, but the teachers are now working together as a team. The next solution, we need to increase the number of male teachers and teacher aides. I mentioned earlier, or maybe I did mention that, I mentioned that 83% of the teachers are white and female. What I did mention is there were 17% of the students nationwide, but only 6% of the teachers are African American, and only 2%, and it's really 1.8%, are African American males. So we need to increase that number, and I understand that you're divided into 3 groups, and one group is specializing in what can be done to increase the number of male teachers. And one excellent way of correcting that problem is with the program Call Me Mister that was founded over 20 years ago in Clemson, South Carolina. I'm on the board of Call Me Mister. It's a great program. It's now on 20 campuses nationwide, including a couple campuses in Maryland. They give grants and scholarships to Black male students who want to major in education. They bring consultants like me in on a regular basis to encourage them and promote them. We need to also find ways to have a transition between Black males who are teacher aides and develop them to be teachers. The next solution is that we need to increase time on task. Don't think that every teacher in Maryland is given the same number of minutes of instruction. And if you lose 15 minutes a day times 5 days a week, that's 75 minutes. Multiplied by a school year of 36 weeks, that would give a teacher almost 3 extra weeks of additional time on task. My next solution is that in high achieving schools, they use the data to drive instruction. They don't use the race of the student, the parental background of the student, the number of parents. They use the test data, and they don't use the data for evaluation purposes. They use it for diagnostic purposes. Again, I really regret we're rushing this one. This is what I really like spending a lot of time on. There are 6 types of educators in Maryland: custodians, referral agents, missionaries, instructors, master teachers, and coaches. And Black boys see too few master teachers and coaches and too many custodians, referral agents, missionaries, and instructors. In terms of referral agents, research shows 20% of the teachers are making 80% of the referrals to special education and suspension. The problem may not be with Willie. It may be with Miss Ann, the referral agent. For homework, if any of you are actually still involved in schools, I'd like for you to write down the names of the staff persons who are custodians, referral agents, missionaries, instructors, master teachers, and coaches. Next solution, college application. If time permits, at some point we'll talk about one of my pride and joys, Urban Prep. Urban Prep was founded almost 8 to 10 years ago in the poorest neighborhood of Chicago, Inglewood. In a neighborhood where they only had one high school, Harper High School, with a graduation rate of only 35%. Anything good come out of Nazareth? Oh, yes, it can. And in Urban Prep, 8 years ago, for the opening freshman class, they were only given one sheet of paper. It's a college application. We were making a statement. Not only do we expect you to graduate from high school, we expect you to be accepted and to graduate from college. 4 years later, every one of the Urban Prep graduates were accepted into college. We created an environment of high expectations on the very first day with a college application. The next solution, again used at Urban Prep, Eagles in New York, the morning unity circle. We can avoid disciplinary problems if we allow children to express some of the things that happen in their neighborhoods and in their homes for at least 5 to 10 to 15 minutes. It's called the morning unity circle. We also recommend a daily or weekly culture class. Unfortunately, in America, Black history is taught in the shortest month of the year, February. That's the reason why so many of our youth associate being smart with being white. For homework, who was the first doctor? Who's the father of medicine? And please don't say Hippocrates. When we teach children their culture on a regular basis, when they're taught as much history before 1619 as after 1619, they know the answer is not Hippocrates. We also are recommending, until we increase the number of male teachers, peer mentoring and adult mentoring. Shaker Heights in Ohio has done a fantastic job of creating peer mentors. Their seventh graders mentor fifth graders. Their 11th graders mentor ninth graders. And they try their best to identify as many positive adult males that will come in on a weekly or monthly basis to mentor our students. The next solution, the Buddy Buddy program. You have a class of 28 students, 14 girls, 14 boys. We recommend 7 pairs of 2 where they hold each other accountable. If we had more time, we would elaborate on the Buddy Buddy program. Let's move on to cooperative learning. Black males do everything together but study. Schools teach more than 3 R's. They teach values. And most schools teach to value I and not we. They teach competition and not cooperation. We have research from Howard University under the leadership of Wade Boykin that documents that test scores improve with cooperative learning. We also recommend single gender classes and single gender schools. We have good research coming from Urban Prep, Eagles, Cosbop, Stetson University on the efficacy that when Black males are in single gender classrooms, their test scores improve, their attendance improves, their behavior improves. Let's move on. We have a curriculum, we have 2 now. If you can write down the next one, it's COVID 1619. What's on your screen is SECLA, self-esteem through culture leads to academic excellence. We recommend that all schools in Maryland use our curriculums, SECLA and COVID-19. The Dr. King classroom. It is amazing, Dr. King, they love you now in 2020, especially in light of Black Lives Matter. But they hated you when you were alive in the 1960s. If America really wants to appreciate Dr. King, we need to show boys how to resolve conflict through nonviolence. That was what Dr. King stood for. And Black Lives Matter could learn greatly from the nonviolence movement of Dr. King. Now, we never want to separate King from Malcolm. The media loves separating our leaders when they had so many similarities. So if we're going to have a Dr. King class, we also recommend the Malcolm X class. We'll use this for in-house suspension, very similar to Scared Straight, and the evolution of Malcolm Little to Detroit Red to Malcolm X to Al-Haj Malik al-Shabazz. The next one is rites of passage. And Kozbach gave very good information on rites of passage. There's also the National Institute of Rites of Passage, directed by Paul Hill out of Cleveland, Ohio. We recommend this program be used either before school, during the school day, or after school. This is followed by the fourth grade intervention team. Any boy whose scores are declining after third or fourth grade, we have an intervention team of psychologists, social workers, counselors, male mentors that will intervene on the boy's behalf. We also recommend an increase of right brain lesson plans. Most teachers, especially from the fourth grade on, use a left brain pedagogy. Boys don't change their learning style as they matriculate from one grade to another. If they were a right brain thinker in first grade, they're a right brain thinker in eighth grade. But most instructors use a left brain pedagogy with right brain thinkers. I was taught you don't teach the way you want to teach. You teach the way your children learn. And children, especially boys, African American males, have different learning styles. We could reduce special ed placement if we simply had PE offered on a daily basis. We could reduce obesity and being overweight with PE on a daily basis. We could improve attention span and test scores with PE on a daily basis. Most schools at best offer PE twice a week. We also recommend, because a large number of our students are kinesthetic learners, allow more movement. In urban prep and in Eagles, it's not surprising that you'll see Black males standing up behind their desk if they answer a question correctly, shooting a ball into a basket. We want more movement, more activity in the classroom. It is very difficult to sit still from 9 o'clock to 3 in a classroom. I challenge the adults listening to the morning to sit still from 9 to 3 and stay focused. Secle posters. Most classrooms tell the story. I can walk into a school and in a classroom, and in 3 to 5 minutes, I can tell you the outcome of the students. And one of the ways I do that are the posters, the decorations in the classroom. Here it is, we have a school 50% male, 50% African American, and literally an all white feminine bulletin board. We want the classroom posters to be Afrocentric. We also want them to be masculine. I mentioned on the screen on reading, best books for boys. We have a collection of books based on grade levels, 20 books for each grade, kindergarten through high school, that we have researched that inspire boys to read. I believe that there's no greater gift we could give boys than the love for reading. Many boys could literally graduate from high school and never found a love for reading. If we had more time, we would develop that point. 7:39, we have 6 minutes left. We need to encourage boys to become entrepreneurs. The Black boys can sell crack, they can sell Cisco, Microsoft, IBM, and any other product. For homework, what is Rule 72? White boys know Rule 72. Has something to do with the stock market. My recommendation, Dr. Greene, is that in Maryland, a Black boy cannot graduate from high school until he developed a business plan, a perfect hybrid between language arts and mathematics. We have found good research with chess. It improves their GPA, and it also improves their attention span. We also recommend teaching boys how to debate. And it's unfortunate in our presidential and vice presidential debates, they have been anything but presidential. They remind me of third graders. We need to teach Black boys the art of debate. We're also recommending evening, Saturday, and Sunday and summer academies. We also recommend that our boys visit the house. They need to see over 3,000 Black males in Atlanta at Morehouse, over 3,000 Black males with an average GPA of 3.2, a median ACT score of 26, a median SAT score of 1,600. They need to visit the house. We're also recommending that they visit affluent neighborhoods so they see how rich people live and it inspires them to strive for excellence. We also recommend, until we have more Black male teachers, that every school is adopted by a church. As Dr. Greene will tell you, in some Black neighborhoods, we have 3 churches on the same block, but not making a difference in the neighborhood. So we want every church and every Black business or every business to adopt a school. Right quick, let me just go through these without being able to mention them in detail. The African American Male Initiative, great work is being done in Oakland, California. We recommend that every classroom lower the thermostat to 69 degrees, standing at a desk, shooting a basket, understand relational learners, the pre-referral intervention team, utilizing rap lyrics, the freshman academy, and monthly convocations. Let me close with this one, the monthly convocation. HBCUs only have they only have 12% of the students, but they produce over 24% of the graduates. And if an African American student has a master's or a PhD, over 60% of them were undergraduates at an HBCU. One of the successes of HBCUs is that they understand the importance of motivating students. So on a monthly basis, they have a convocation, an assembly. Can you imagine Dr. King and Morehouse? Benjamin Mays felt even Dr. King at 19 years of age needed motivation, needed a monthly assembly program, needed a motivational speaker to come to their school. Now, if colleges feel a need for their 18 to 25-year-old students to be motivated, then surely our kindergarten to 12th grade students need a monthly convocation. Well, that's it for my PowerPoint presentation. I'm now going to open it up to the floor. Again, I apologize that we rushed this greatly.
Dr. Kunjufu, I'm sure my colleagues would agree. This has been outstanding. Outstanding.
Thank you.
All right, you have some questions. First of all, Mr. Jones, could you ask one of your questions? Mr. Dwayne Jones, could you ask one of your questions, please? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry, Doctor. I had to unmute myself.
Good to see you, Dwayne. And I saw when I first started my presentation, one of your questions was when I mentioned a classroom of 20 students,
Right.
with a master teacher and looping them for several years. If I recall correctly, you wanted to know what criterion we use for the selection of those 20 students.
Yes.
Was that one of your questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're flexible in that. It would be ideal if they were the quote unquote in the top quartile of the class. But what I've been recommending in my workshops nationwide is that we're challenging principals. Give us your 20 most challenging fourth grade male students and give them to us for 4 consecutive years for fifth, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade with teachers like you, Dwayne. So can you imagine if we had 20 of our most challenging students and they had you for fifth and sixth grade, and then they had Phil Johnson for seventh and eighth grade. We're going to see a tremendous increase in test scores. And this would set to rest this notion that because they're Black and male and fatherless, that the children are broke. No, the children were never broke. The problem was they were never given master teachers and coaches for consecutive years. So to answer your question, Dwayne, it doesn't matter to us the background of the students at all. Better yet, we want the most challenging students to show the school the importance that they can make on the impact of students.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Keep up
Jones.
the work.
Mr. Conway, you had a question?
Yes. My question was in reference to when you were talking about poor teachers and master teachers, and I was just wondering what criteria do you use to define the master teacher?
All right. Again, that's a day's workshop in and of itself. But let me say this. A custodian, well, I don't know how to answer this question in 2 minutes. But let me say that a master teacher understands the importance, like an instructor. They understand their subject matter. They understand, like a master teacher, the importance of a congruence between pedagogy and learning styles. They also understand, like a coach, you can't teach a child you have not bonded with. You can't teach a child that you do not respect, that you do not like, that you don't understand their culture. A master teacher, Hampton, gives greater time on task. They don't lose 15 minutes in the course of a school day. They're at their best during the school day, and they try everything possible to avoid losing minutes. If you read my book, Black Students, Middle Class Teachers, there's nothing wrong with Black students and understanding Black male learning styles. There's more answers in those 3 books. I apologize, Conway. Thanks for the question.
No problem. Thank you for it. Can I follow it up with another question?
Of course you can. You can, I guess, if Dr. Greene says yes.
Absolutely, go right ahead.
So along those lines, I guess I'm wondering, I'm thinking about the administrators who don't necessarily know what to look for and how you go about making, and you might have, I'm sure your book contains some of it. So even though I'm thinking about how to define it, how do you go about making sure administrators, if they're the ones responsible for pointing out those people and choosing those people and making those decisions, how do you get administrators? Because if you ask different administrators, you're going to get different answers. So how do you
Now, see, Conway, I thought you and I were friends. Why are you asking me questions that require a day's worth of answers? Now, in our workshop for principals, we use the research from the Wallace Foundation. We have found, Conway, the most important factor in the school is the principal. And the research shows a principal can improve test scores by over 20%. Now, the challenge, as you know, Conway, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to have a high achieving school with an ineffective, incompetent, principal. You can't change the culture of the school if the principal is ineffective. And that's why you notice my first solution, whether it was Black males or Black females or African American students, Hispanic students, the first solution I always give is the building principle. Now, with 10 minutes left, any other questions from this distinguished panel beside Conway?
Mr. Jones had some additional questions.
Yeah,
Wait a minute, hold on. To the females, why are the males dominating this Q&A? Before we continue, I've been criticized so many times that much of my research has looked at the males. So Dr. Greene, my two latest books are for the females. One is titled Educating Black Girls, and the other one is titled Raising Black Girls. For homework, listen, I want you to write this down. For homework, Black males score 16.7 on the ACT. Black females only score 17.1 on the ACT. But there are over 1 million more Black females in college than there are Black males. How can 3/10 from 16.7, I'm sorry, 4/10 from 16.7 to 17.1, how can that explain over 1 million more Black females in college? That's a homework assignment. Now, my email address, because I gave you about 7 questions. My email address, I'm serious about this now. The nerve of you waking me up at 5:30 in the morning, Arizona time, for this workshop. You all could have had this workshop at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I thought you all loved me. So my email address is jawanza@africanamerican.images.com. I expect to see those homework answers on my desk in my email box by tomorrow morning, 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. Next question with 8 minutes left.
Mr. Williams had a question.
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Kanjufu, pleasure to be with you and to hear you give us your infinite wisdom and knowledge. My question is regarding, because I've read several of your books and in reading Changing School Culture for Black Boys, you in the first chapter talk about this notion of white affluent families having their boys school age 6. Is there any research that you could point me to on how boys do in starting kindergarten at 6 versus starting at age 5?
Well, first of all, it's good to hear your voice, Desmond. You're a brilliant educator. You've been consistent for years.
Thank you, sir.
In the book Changing School Culture, there should be a reference to that. In Europe, they've been a strong advocate of single gender classrooms and schools, and their primary reason is that they acknowledge that there's a maturation difference. And as you pointed out, Desmond, white females want to give their boys the edge. So they will allow their 5-year-old girl to start kindergarten, but they will delay the entrance of their 5-year-old boy into kindergarten until age 6. They don't have any problems with their 6-year-old boy being in a classroom with 5-year-old children because they want to make sure that their sons are not being unfairly compared to students who mature at a faster level. So there's good research coming out of Europe, out of private schools in America that have also done this for years, and also affluent neighborhoods. So please look at that book, Changing School Culture, for the reference. If not, I'll send you an additional reference or footnote to add on to that.
Okay, thank you for that.
6 minutes left.
Dr. Kunjufu, what do you say to, unfortunately, naysayers who say boys learn differently than girls? What do you say to the naysayers?
Well, that again that's almost a week's worth of answers. You all, I understand, heard the research from Leonard Sachs, and he documented, and his research showed, regardless of the race of the students, there were twice as many females in AP, gifted and talented honors classes than there were male students. And the research worsens if you look at the if you compare white females to black males and their reading scores, their AP scores, their percentage of gifted and talented, it's not even close. When I mentioned the screens that I showed on gender differences, and I mentioned, for example, we know that boys have a higher energy level. I don't think any educator, especially white females, would disagree. Boys, regardless of race, bring a higher energy level to the classroom. The solution is not special ed. The solution is not Ritalin. The solution is not making boys sit still. It's allowing more of a tactile, kinesthetic pedagogy. And it is amazing to me how we don't have a problem with single gender classes if we call them remedial reading, if we call them special ed. But let us be proactive and create a single gender classroom before the problem starts. Then we're considered racist and sexist. And by the way, as you know, Dr. Greene, when I recommended in 1978 single gender classrooms in schools, the two groups that gave me the greatest hell were the ACLU and the feminists, the NOW organization. But over the years, we've had an increase in the number of single gender classrooms in schools. And the major reason for that is that the feminists found out that when females are in single gender classrooms, they excel in math and science. You see, the feminists have been frustrated for years because white females have outperformed white males K-12 and the collegiate level, but white males, for some strange reason, still make more money. And that's driven by STEM. So my research and my career has been helped by the feminists being in support of single gender classrooms in schools. We have time for one more question before I have to move to another meeting.
Dr. Kunjufu, can I ask just a quick question?
No, Dwayne, the last question needs to be asked by a female, because I also believe as a teacher that you need to make sure that all of your students are involved in the classroom. We cannot allow 4 males to take over this presentation.
I got you. Okay, I respect that.
One of your lady colleagues.
No, Dr. Greene, we need someone outside of you. We need another
one of your lady,
outside you or Dr. Simpson.
one of your lady colleagues will ask your question, Mr. Jones.
All right.
Not everybody wants.
Come on, Mrs. Roberts, ask one of Mr. Jones's questions. You see it in the chat box?
I have a question. I'm wondering, this is Andrea Kane.
Andrea,
So
good to see you.
Dr. Kunjufu, have been following you for a long, long time. I wonder if you could just spend a couple of minutes, I know you have to get ready to leave, but expanding on the notion of what happens or the implications of mama's boys, and I'm using the word, in classrooms. I know that's probably a day long. I know that's a day long. Why don't you ask me
another question that would take years to answer? We want to come back to Maryland and talk with your parents, but let me say this in closing. How long can your son stay in your house? There's nothing worse than a 40-year-old boy still at home with his mom. There are mothers who told their 9-year-old boy, "You are the man of the house." And boys believe that. They believe they're the man. And there's a power play going on, Andrea, between Black boys and female teachers. We call it the showdown. The power play on who's going to control the class. Because boys believe they're in charge of the house and the classroom because their mothers lied to them. A 9-year-old boy is not a man. We've enjoyed you, everyone. Keep up the good work. Hope to see you soon.
Dr. Kunjufu, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we must have you back to Maryland for that 3-day workshop that you were talking about. I mean, this has been awesome. Thank you and enjoy
Thank
your
you.
day. All right. At this time, oh my, that's just, whew, my heart is just full. Whew. At this time, we're going to reconvene in your study groups. Please keep the conversation going. I've got 5 pages of solutions that Dr. Kunjufu has given us. Let's see if we could use some of those for our recommendations. Thank you, everyone, and I'll see you in November when we'll have presentations from Dr. Johnson and also Dr. Howard. And I failed to recognize some of our guests that we have. We have Ms. Crystal Chambers, the principal at Centerville Middle School in Queen Anne's County, Dr. Keynes County. We also have Ms. Denisha Logan, and also Pastor Michael Phillips from Life Prep Charter Schools as the director. We have Dr. Getty, our school board member as well. So
Thank you.
thank you for being here, Dr. Getty. Wasn't that good? We have to take it back to our colleagues on the board. All right. Thank you, everyone. See you next month. Take care. Thank you, Dr. Simpson. Everything worked perfectly.
Sorry, I was muted. Great. All right. Are you going to go back into study? Well, just give me a call if you need anything or send me an email.
I'm going to go visit some.